Hello, this is Angela Hendricks, and today I'm going to be showing you how to draw a rabbit. First, you're going to need to draw a faint outline. I prefer to use a 4H pencil for this because the harder lead prevents the lines from being so dark. Switch over to the 6B to add darker details. I find using a reference image very helpful when drawing a subject that I'm not familiar with. You can find such images online or in a textbook. At this point, you'll want to switch back to your 4H pencil so that you can faintly outline all of the spaces that need to be shaded lighter or darker. When shading in the eye, I used a 4B first and layered on top with a 6B to add depth. Then I used the H pencil to shade in all of the previously outlined spaces. Here I used the blender stick to create a soft shadow inside the ear. Here I'm adding more cross-hatching or more shading with the 4H pencil. And then I switched over to the 5B and 6B to add darker shades to the nose, mouth, and eyes. Now I'm ready to add the fur texture, and for that I used the 4B. And I also used the shader to add the vein inside the ear and more shadows since the ear is more of a flesh texture and very smooth inside. The fur creates an outline because, as we know, nothing is really outlined in real life, so we don't want a hard line around this drawing either. I switch between the 4B, the B, and the HB pencil to add the fur texture because it's darker than the 4H and lighter than the 5B. The shading I did before creates depth for the fur texture that I'm placing on top. Each hair requires its own individual swift stroke since each hair is separate. So this can be done quickly and easily. Remember to pay close attention to the direction in which you draw the hairs or the fur. The facial features are defined by the direction in which you draw the fur, so be careful. This can be quite tedious, but it gets easier as you go on. There are tufts of hair that overlap, and so I use one of the darker pencils, the 5B, to illustrate how thick or how the hair overlaps, or how the fur is overlapped by fur on top of it. I believe the shadows would be deepest there, and therefore need to be illustrated darker than the rest. I add the finer hairs with a mid shade, the HB pencil. This was my go-to pencil in this drawing. It's soft, but it's not that soft. So the lines it creates are just dark enough to be seen, but not so dark that it becomes a shadow. I left a bit of negative space in the drawing to indicate highlights. Since I'm not using white, I use the negative space with the paper to illustrate that the fur is white or very light. I switch back and forth between all of the pencils to get the texture, and the texture varies very much. You want as much depth and detail as you can possibly get on this piece. For the whiskers, I used the H pencil. I also used the electric eraser by Helix to create negative space where the whiskers overlap the fur. I also used the electric eraser to erase a few spots on the eyeball to indicate that the eyeball is shiny. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Have a great day!